Hello everyone, welcome to what's happening in Brazil. Let's start with the latest news from the country.
A wave of protests took many Brazilian cities after the murder of Moïse Kaba-gambe, a Congolese immigrant who died in Rio de Janeiro on January 24th. He worked at a beachside kiosk and, according to his family, went to the place to collect overdue payments. The young man, who was just 24, was beaten to death. 3 men claimed responsibility for the crime and were arrested. For the Black movement organizations who called the protests, the murder was motivated by racism. Moïse and his family came to Brazil when he was 11. They ran away from the civil war in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Rio de Janeiro City Hall announced that the kiosk where Moïse worked will become a memorial to be managed by his family. In the National Congress, senators demanded a public audience to discuss violence against immigrants and refugees. 1 out of 5 people who voted for Bolsonaro in the 2018 presidential election will vote for Lula in this year's election. That's what shows a poll released on February 7th. Other 10% of those who regret voting for Bolsonaro intend to vote for former judge Sérgio Moro. The new poll also shows that Lula conquested some of Bolsonaro's voters. In the previous voting poll conducted in January, Lula and Sérgio Moro were tied, with 12% of the voting intention among those who repented for backing Bolsonaro. 7% of those who voted in Bolsonaro will cast a blank ballot or spoil their ballot. Other 54% still support the president. The poll showed Lula ahead of the other candidates, with 41%, followed by Bolsonaro with 30%.
Besides being a public health problem, the rise in contaminations by the Omicron variant is also a challenge to the economy. Employees are taking sick leaves and it impacts the business, being that the smaller ones are the most affected.
The smell of bread wakening up the neighborhood of this small artisanal bakery in Fortaleza, Cearás capital city, wasn't appreciated for many days. The reason was that 70% of its employees were sick, including the bakery's owner. The place had to close its doors more than once in January this year.
During the first COVID wave, we managed to keep on open. We had a reduced staff and made smaller batches of bread. On the second wave, we also managed to keep going. This period was when we didn't have many employees taking sick leaves. But now, the third wave combined COVID and influenza. So, since mid-December, workers have to take sick leaves.
It didn't take much for all of them to present influenza symptoms, as the bakery's general helper, Maria Angélica Barreto. She had to stay at home.
I had a 3-day-long headache. It was non-stop, plus fever, a scratchy throat, general sluggishness and no appetite. I went 4 days without eating properly.
Cassius Bakery supplies food to small businesses of Cearás capital city, as Helena Romero's breakfast business. The lack of products like bread isn't the only problem. Helena also copes with employees constantly taking sick leaves, a situation that keeps getting worse.
There are a lot of difficulties in finding COVID tests or arranging a medical appointment in public health centers. Therefore, we decided to pay an extra amount to employees so they can get private COVID tests, isolate as soon as possible, and recover from the disease.
In health centers, we isolate for 5 days the patients who arrive there presenting influenza symptoms, and for 7 days those with COVID symptoms. It's important that before returning to the workplace, they must be asymptomatic, or they can transmit the virus.
In Paraíba, a theater group formed by farming workers promotes thinking through their plays.
Theater is an inestimable value too, in the sense that it transforms people's views, brings hope, and makes them see themselves as part of it, since we make it based on the theater of the oppressed. Those who watch our plays are not just watching it passively, but also acting, discussing, raising their own questions.
In 13 cities in the state of Paraíba, the amateur theater group of Borborema has been using art and culture as tools to transform things.
trazendo o tema de enfrentamento.
We address topics such as diversity and the confronting of violence against women, important themes as Black women. The theater group of Borborema has a major political role in this communication.
The group was born in the 90s and is formed by actors, farming workers, and unionists. Altogether, 57 plays were produced and staged, being 30 of them children's theater plays.
We learn a lot from this theater. We have realized how much these stories involve the people who are watching. These are rich stories that have been made into plays. They see themselves at this moment. It inspires us, and we also learn from it. The theater group of Borborema has the role of discussing and transforming things.
And now it's time for Brazilianese.
Today's recipe is an amazing quick cooking dish, one of those recipes we love because it is easy to prepare. I'm gonna teach you a way to cook fish that I have learned in Pará State. In a pan, braise in oil the onion, bell pepper, and cilantro stalks. When they begin to turn brown, add the garlic cloves and the natto powder and braise them too. Add the tomato cores. Now add the washed and drained rice and braise it until the grains are translucent. Now it is time for adding the other parts of the tomatoes and half of the chopped juma pepper. Cover it with cold water. Let it cook on high heat until almost all the water has evaporated. When there are little holes in the rice, turn down the heat and put the pan on the smaller stove. If possible, put a frying pan below it so as the rice will finish to cook almost as if steaming. Let it cook for 15 minutes. While the rice is cooking, season the fish with salt and black pepper. After 15 minutes, open the pan and place the fish fillets on holes you're gonna make on the surface of the rice. Close the pan and wait for 15 minutes again. When the fish be cooked, add the rest of the chopped juma pepper and cilantro. Close the pan and let it rest for some minutes before serving it.
Do you like the show? So hit the like button and share with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to receive notifications. We will see you next week.